Well, I think I should do some of my duty here. And what I'll do is just read a couple of little passages to sort of get a feel of Trauma Farm, if I can find where I've written them up. Okay. I guess I tried to do this book in the way that we do the farm, is that I try to make the book is a kind of holistic experiment in literature. It's a sort of, it's based on the native teaching tale, where your culture, when you don't have when you don't have a written language and you don't have dictionaries, everything is carried in your voice, the spoken word, as it were. And so in many native cultures, especially when the nights come down and so on, and when you're all stuck together thinking of things to do, storytelling starts to happen. And the storytelling takes many, many forms, of course. And so there's stories, they're often, not only are they sort of adventure stories, or they're humorous stories, or they're stories about death and the stories about birth, but they're also stories about the history of the tribe, because that's how you tell your history when you have no books, right? Is that it's always through the stories. So not only do they give their history, but they also sort of give lessons in manners and all kinds of things, like how to behave properly in the world and how not to mistreat the animals and be nice to your mother, and et cetera, as well as sort of, like how to make a good bow. So all of this is combined in these kinds of teaching tales, and this is what I tried to do with Trauma Farm. So that's why it's got a sort of rounded kind of feel about the book. It tries to contain the whole within the multitude of stories to build up that whole. Because really it's an argument against, well, I don't know if I say it's not even an argument against. It's an argument for a way of life that we are losing and that is disappearing. We're now in an era where children can look outside of a bus window and say to their mother, "Is that a crow?" Right? A world where people come to our farm and are afraid of our chickens. Right? A world where people don't know where the food that they eat came from, and they don't know what it's been through. And we've gone from basically the Garden of Eden, which to the sort of globalization of and to the sort of mass factory production of places like China. And what I try to do is present an alternate world, one that has been there for many thousands of years. Not that small farming in the local community couldn't be bad either. And this is one of the things I also have to deal with in this, because it's not quite the blissful living with a happy sheep kind of world that some would present. But so what I did with this book is I did it over a period of a day, a solstice day. And I start out in the darkness and end up in the darkness. And during that day, as I go around the farm, I not only describe our 20-year history of the farm, but also the whole history of the small farm basically from Babylon to globalization. One of the mistakes that I made was that when you live in a place where you can't see a neighbor, clothing becomes optional also, right? And if you got some racket breaking out of the chicken coop at 3 a.m, one has a tendency to just throw on one's gumboots and run out there and find out what the hell's going on. And this has since come back to haunt me. Anyways, I've got through the night here at this part, and we're probably, I guess, at my favorite time of the day. Trauma Farm is very much a morning farm. Our actual name is Willow Pond Farm. Trauma Farm is what everybody came to call it after we'd been living there for about a year. And so it's a very ironic name and very accurate. Even though we do sell pussy willows and ornamental willows to florists amongst the many other things that we sell. But this is my favorite time, the morning, the gray hour. Approximately 100 million years ago, a tentative wave of song began rotating around our planet without interruption, following the dawn, traveling at 18 miles a second across the equator in an oral celebration of approaching sunshine. In the temperate landscape of Trauma Farm, the song surf of the birds is spectacular, and the gray hour now peaking is my favorite moment of the day. It's when the earth, bursting with the energy of the dawn chorus, flexes its muscles, the hope and desire for life singing strongest in the shrubs. Hayam Harat Olam. Today the world is pregnant, goes the opening line of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy. Birth always inspires us. At first, only a few tentative, pensive notes and insecure rebel yells drift into the air. Then the drab Swainson's thrush calls out its haunt upon the farm, a ghost in the trees. This bird wears all its color in its song, possessing the most lingering, bittersweet refrain I've ever encountered. Although the thrush is endemic to North America, the Swainson's defines the Rain Coast, its distinct song identified with the Gulf Islands. Lingering, plaintive, echoing in the evergreens, replaced only by the mighty vocalizations of the raven in winter or the punky yap of the gulls and the saltchuck. Every landscape has its song. One of the crimes of our time is that most of us no longer know the birds of our region. So many ears are stopped with the headphones of personal music devices. Though evocative, the Swainson's thrush is no vocal athlete, and its song is simple and pure. Whereas the hermit thrush is reputed to have 12,000 songs. Its songs generally last less than 2 seconds, using 45 to 100 notes and 50 pitch changes. The hermit thrush sings with both sides of its syrinx simultaneously, its minute muscles controlling the volume of air and its position in the bird's throat and beak. That this feat of engineering evolved out of chance mutation is a wonder of the world. As a result of these mechanics, the bird sounds like an angel. The biologist, Don Kruzma, describes the hermit thrush song as, "Oh, holy, holy, ah, purity, purity, sweetly, sweetly." I just want to do a little brief passage about, I did really try to celebrate some of the local farmers in the area that had sort of basically come to the island in the 30s and homesteaded it more or less, and out of incredible poverty at the time. And there was one great family there that I got to know, the Byrons, who I actually dedicated this book to Mike Byron and his wife Bev. But he had a brother who was just a magnificent man and one of the great gourmets of apples. This guy, you could just look at the tree and tell you what kind of apple it was, when it was created, or where it came from, and what its purposes were. So that, whether it was a juicing apple or a pie apple or a dessert apple or and so on. And we used to make cider, great volume. We get hundreds of feed bags and fill them with apples in the fall. And I was sort of more or less the grunt, right? I was the guy operating the thing, and he would sort of sit in the lawn chair and shout out commands, and he'd say, more Golden Grimes, we need a little snap in this, or more Wolf River, it's getting too strong tasting, and so on. And so he sort of designed this apple juice, the like of which will never be seen pretty well again. And it's actually, it's illegal to even make apple juice anymore. The apple police are after us, right? We have clandestine meetings or phone trees on the island where somebody will phone and say the apple juice is down at Fulford between 11 and 5 tomorrow, and everybody will rush down and buy all the apple juice, and the money from it will go to the local kindergarten playground or something like that, or building more illegal docks in the lakes. And various things like that one has to do with all the health Nazis that are forever chasing us around. Anyways, this is just a little section about Howard. Howard died the year after that autumn of many apples. Besides being a great farmer, he was also the island dog catcher. He could be harsh and accurate with a gun, and he was one of the most tender men with animals I ever met. He raised a blind deer and a crippled crow as pets. At Howard's funeral, half the community showed up: farmers, loggers, the gay crowd, bikers, sculptors, poets, and developers. It was perhaps the most spectacular assortment of islanders from different worlds I've seen assembled. His beat-up cap was placed on his coffin, and when they lowered the coffin into the ground, Mac, his collie, devoted to the end, tried to leap into the grave. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. When they covered him with dirt, they were bearing an enormous knowledge of apples, sheepdogs, gardening skills, and livestock behavior, a great raft of pages out of the book of local history. Another library gone to the ground. One of the horrors, I guess, of our era, is that, it's taken us a few hundred years to finally learn some respect for the traditional cultures of Native people around the world, and especially the ones of North America that were so mistreated over so many years. And the sad thing is that we've finally learned to respect the traditional knowledge of Native elders and so on, at the same time as we are losing the traditional knowledge of our own elders, the people that have lived like Howard and so on, so close to the ground and so with the natural world, have great, they're just amazing things that they can tell you about how to grow parsnips or how to kill a pig. It's just stuff that is being lost. One of the great things that is happening, and that's why I call this a rebel history, of course, is that there's a great backlash against this loss and the loss of the heritage of the sort of human environment that we're destroying busily with this globalization business. One of the things that's happening, of course, is the great extinctions. We're very aware of the extinctions in the natural world, but not many people are aware of the extinctions that are occurring in the world of human tradition. For instance, let's see, what are the numbers here? It's pretty horrendous what's going on. 91% of all cabbage varieties have disappeared in the last 100 years. 81% of tomatoes. There's whole varieties of livestock, each one bred for very specific reasons and with very beautiful, interesting characteristics. They're all they're actually intentionally being made extinct. Many of the great agribusinesses are actually go out of their way to buy seed companies to destroy them, so that they could limit the range of seeds that you can buy, so that you can then get your seeds only from their varieties and their GMO seeds and so on. And it's to the extent that, say, a company like Monsanto, you aren't your own farmer anymore. You buy the package, as it were. Right? They will sell you a certain variety of corn that grows to an exact height at a certain time of year, and they will sell you the fertilizers and the pesticides, all Monsanto, of course, that go with that corn. And then they will sell you, they own the seed companies, the fertilizer companies, the machinery companies, so they also own the machine that will, the harvester that will cut exactly that height of corn. This is how limited and narrow and dangerous that world has become, because we know what happens when we start fucking with the gene pool, right? But like I say, there's many people right now that are fighting back, and I'm sure even around here.